Hello, creators. Thank you for joining me, and welcome to the Art Part with Miss Colleen. Today we're going to be exploring a little bit more the art element known as texture. Now, in the past, we have explored actual texture by using our materials to change the actual feel and texture of our artwork. Today we are going to begin our exploration of implied or visual texture, which is where we use our materials to create an image that looks like it would feel like a certain texture. So the materials we will need today are a piece of paper, a pencil. I have my little eraser on the side, but you can also use an eraser that's on the back of the pencil. If you don't have an eraser, it's not a big deal. It's just for you. We've also got our crayons here, but that's only if you'd like to use them. I am going to be creating most of these textures just with my pencil. So what we're going to do first, we are going to take maybe 30 seconds or so to think about as many different types of textures as we can. You can think about textures that are in the room with you, or in your house, or in another place you know, or outside. Begin to think about how certain objects and materials feel when you touch them. Maybe a blanket, or clothing, or the hard wood surface of a desk or a table, maybe a countertop or a floor, grass, the fur of a pet, or a stuffed animal. Begin to think about some different ways that things around you feel. And as you're thinking about these things, begin to write them down. Different textures that you can feel in the world. And they can be anywhere on the paper. Just write down as many as you can think of right now. I'm going to write some down too. No right answers, no wrong answers. Just think about how things feel and write down what you think of. Take about 10 or 15 more seconds. Okie dokie. I'm going to read some of the things that I wrote down. Maybe you have some similar words, maybe you have some different ones. But this is how we can get ideas of things we want to practice creating visual texture of in our artwork. So for example, I have wood. It's one of my favorite textures, is the feeling of wood. Cactus, very spiky texture. Soft, I also put furry close by because I think of my dog's fur as very soft and fluffy and furry. Lace is a type of texture I think of, the feeling of lace. Hard, I was thinking of the countertops, the cabinets, the desk. Smooth, my desk is very smooth. Sharp, there are plenty of things that have a very sharp type of texture. Squishy, waxy, like my crayons. Brick, paper has a certain texture. Water definitely has a texture. Sticky, rough is another texture. What we're going to do is we're going to take some of these words, we're going to be practicing different ways to draw them to create the implied visual texture of these different feelings. So go ahead and flip your paper over to the other side, and we are going to practice some of these textures. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create some circles on my paper and practice the textures inside those circles, because some of these I think could be like bubbles or marbles or round balls of these different textures. Just in my imagination, that's going to help me kind of practice some of this. So just create some big circles on your paper. Don't have to be perfect, just making a space. And they can be anywhere you want. After we put textures in them, we will label those textures next to the circles. So make sure you leave a little bit of space in between. Say maybe about 9 circles. Something like that. I am going to start with, I'm going to imagine that this circle is going to be hard and smooth. So you can follow along with me. We're going to have some time first to work together on some different textures, and then later you can come up with your own textures to try to practice what it would be like to create that visual texture. So for now, follow along with me. Your drawing can be a little bit different from mine, but what you're doing is just practicing creating these textures. So for this first one, I'm going to go with hard and smooth, like a ball bearing or a marble or a round metal ball, something like that. So I know that if I'm going for hard and smooth and probably shiny, it's going to help me to add a shine on this ball. So pick a space where you think the light is hitting it. I'm going to put a big old shine like that, like it's a window reflecting on there maybe. Next, if something is hard and shiny, that means it probably has a reflection on the other side from the table, like when we were practicing form. So I'm going to leave a space over here light, but then I'm going to start creating the shadow on that ball. Sort of like that, and then I'm going to color it in. This is one way that you can create a hard, shiny texture. Make sure you know where your light source is, where your shadow is, where your reflections are. And then you can fill in some other shadows, lighter shadows on this round surface. So we know as we get closer to the light source, our value gets lighter. Something like that. You can use whatever coloring method you like. Just be thinking about how you create that sense of a hard, shiny object. Maybe I'll color this in very, very light, because I know it's reflecting the surface that's over here. Something like that. You can touch it up more if you think it's not quite right. We're just practicing creating visual texture, implied texture. It kind of looks more like a shiny hard surface to me. If I compare it to just a regular old circle, I can see, oh, this has a little bit of dimension, and it feels like I know what that would feel like. So right next to it, I'm going to write, somewhere near it, I'm going to write shiny, smooth, and maybe hard. It's up to you how you want to label it. Something along those lines so you remember what you were trying to create with that visual texture there. I'm going to move on to my next one. I think I'll do this one a wood texture. So if I think of wood, I think of the grain of wood, which are the ways that the wood has grown. The grain is the direction that the wood grew and split apart, and the lines that you see, maybe you can see on my desk here, the lines that you see in wood indicate the wood grain. So if I think about that kind of texture, I can see just right here on my desk there's some wavy lines, straighter but a little bit curved lines. I know in other parts of my desk there's a knot, which is that little, can't really see it here, but a knot in the wood that's a little circle area where the wood kind of, the grain kind of flows around. So if I think about all those different, the ways that wood looks, I'm going to see if I can create that idea of texture by recreating the way that it looks. So I think I'll put a knot in my wood right here. You don't have to do exactly what I'm doing. Just explore creating that wood texture on your circle. There we go. And the grain goes around that knot. And then I know by looking at my wooden surfaces around me that those lines kind of follow the same contour for a while. Maybe there's another knot down here. Your wood grain can look like whatever you want to look like. What you're trying to do is create the feeling of wood, the visual texture of wood. So maybe there's some lines that are a little bit wavier than others, and the lines near them a little bit wavier. Don't worry about making it look like a perfect wooden ball. You're just trying to create that sense of visual texture. Maybe some lines are really close together. You can experiment with that. Some lines are farther apart. Maybe there's one more knot over here. I have a very knotty piece of wood. No pun intended. And then you take a step back and look at it. If it looks like wood to you, maybe that's fine. If you want to touch it up or make some changes, totally can. I think I'm going to add some more close together lines. Another thing about visual and implied texture is that color and value can help a lot in creating that sense of texture. So for right now, we're just starting with our pencils. Maybe later you want to go back in and touch up those color and value ideas. There you go. Sometimes creating a circle around the knot helps to make it look a lot like wood grain. There we go. It looks like wood to me, or the beginnings of wood anyway. So I'm going to write wood next to mine. And then maybe I will move on to, let's go with cactus. Cactus definitely has a very particular texture. Start thinking about how you would want to create the feeling of a cactus. Create that visual texture. Well, I know I'm going to need some spikes. I know I'm going to need a lot of spikes. But I think usually, different cacti have different types of spines, of course, so I'm going to decide which kind I want to create today. I think I want to make some that are very pointy. Like that. Take a second to imagine how you want your cactus to feel. Think about your experience with a cactus. When you've seen them out in the world, maybe you've touched one. Maybe you were very careful. Maybe you weren't so careful. My triangles are getting a little big. See, when I draw like that, this is a good opportunity to take a step back and assess. If I see these triangles here don't really look like cactus spikes to me, the really narrow ones look like cactus spikes to me. So maybe I'll try to make those more narrow. As you're going through and you're trying to create these visual implied textures, it can really help to take a step back and see if what you're trying is having the effect that you want it to. One thing about a cactus ball like this, I think on the sides, well, that's going to be a little bit too wide. On the sides, the spines are probably going to point out mostly. Ooh, that one's not pointy. In the middle, they're going to be pointing more at us, right? So probably I'm going to want to make them a little bit seem like they're coming towards the viewer, like my finger is coming towards the camera. That might be a challenge, but we're just exploring, practicing. And that means it's okay no matter what comes out. Oh, very spiky. So as you're doing this, you're just thinking about how can I create the feeling, the feeling of a cactus. How can I have my viewer look at my creation and think, ooh, that feels whatever you want it to feel like. Spiky, sharp, pointy, dangerous. It is up to you. So now these ones here, maybe I'm going to want to make them a little bit rounder on the bottom so they feel like we're looking down at them. I don't know, this is a challenge. It's a challenge for me. I'm learning too. Just keep exploring the ideas that you have. And then as they get towards the center, they're coming right out at you. So they probably look very tiny, just like my finger looks very tiny when it's pointing at the camera. And maybe they even look like circles with little points right in the middle there. Well, those kind of look like eyeballs. Maybe I'll try a different strategy. So if I take a step back and look at that, that definitely looks spiky to me. I think I got these a little bit longer down at the bottom than these ones up here. So maybe I would do that differently next time, but I'm going to put spiky cactus, pointy, something like that right there. Next, I'm going to move on to, how about furry? Let's make a fluffy ball up here. If I think about my dog's fur, it kind of goes in mostly the same direction, but a little bit different directions, and it's very light, so I'm probably not gonna press super hard when I'm doing this, and I'm probably gonna create a lot of lines because she has a lot of fur. So imagine something furry when you're working on this. And I'm starting with having the fur come off the ball because I'm imagining long fur. You might imagine some shorter fur. It's up to you. But if I'm going to fill up this whole ball, cover this whole ball in fur, then I'm going to do a lot of lines. Probably some curved lines, some wispy lines. Doesn't have to look like anything in particular. I'm imagining it going in this direction, from this side towards the back this side. You can do it whichever way you feel like. It's just the thing I thought of. Might be different from what you thought of. Just putting some fur on this ball. And if you draw some fur that you think doesn't quite look the way you're trying to make it feel, you can erase it. Try again. That's okay. Just imagine what you want this fur to feel like. That your viewer thinks, if I were to touch that, it would feel like what? Maybe the fur you're doing is very wavy, or very straight, or wiry. There's a lot of different kinds of fur. Just think of what feeling you want to create and try to see if you can create that with just your pencil. I've got kind of a furry ball there. It's all kind of sticking out all over the place, but it does look like if I touched it, it would probably be fluffy. So I'm going to write furry, fluffy. I did that one pretty fast, so if you're still working on it, you can keep working on it. But I'm going to move on. I'm going to work on maybe something gooey. Gooey, sticky. Something like that. Maybe like slimy. I think that would be kind of interesting. How do I make this circle look slimy? Well, I think slimy probably means it's got a little bit of a shine, not as much as of a reflective surface as this one, but a little bit of a shine. So maybe I'll just very lightly put sort of a gooey shine there on the ball. Maybe it has drips of slimy goo coming down on it. Coming down. Maybe there's a drop like that. And maybe a drop on the side here. And a few more gooey drops. Just thinking icky, gooey, slimy. Something like that. And maybe it's even dripping all the way down. It's really gooey. Really slimy. And put another one coming like that. And you know, when I have the two sides like that, it doesn't quite look the way I think it might look, so maybe I'll erase it and see if I like it better. Just keep trying different things. See what works for you, what you think makes it look gooey, slimy, sticky. And you know what? Maybe the droplets have their own little shines on them. Because if it's slimy, they're probably shiny too. So I'm just going to very lightly. It doesn't really have to be a rectangle because they're so little. Probably just looks like a little shine wherever that light source is. Remember that. That's up to you. There we go. Maybe you want to create a few more drops. Maybe that not every single one of them needs to have a shine. That looks kind of distracting to me. If it looks okay to you, maybe that's fine with you. It's whatever you want it to look like. I think only some of them need to have shines on mine. There we go. That looks gooey, sticky, slimy to me, so that's what I'm gonna write. Gooey, slimy. All right, couple more. Now's when you can start to be thinking of what are some textures that we haven't tried out here that you have in the room with you or that you can imagine. I've got paper towel right here. That maybe I could try to create that kind of a texture. There's a lot, this is a very distinct texture, how it feels. And there's a lot of detail on here that I could try to recreate to create that feeling of paper towel texture. So you can follow along with me if you'd like. Now's when you can start trying to create some other textures on your own if you would like. But let's see if I can recreate. I'm gonna bring that paper towel. You can see I've been painting. Bring that paper towel right here so I can take a look at it as I'm drawing. I know it's got some diamonds, this particular brand. Excuse me. So maybe, and I also noticed that it's very light, very, very light. I don't think I want to make these lines very hard if I draw them. Because I want it to feel, I want it to look like a paper towel would feel. So maybe I'll just do a very light diamond shape like that. And then I notice that there's another diamond shape down here, sort of with some parallel lines to that other one. There we go. And maybe another one way over here. And maybe one here. I notice that there's another smaller diamond inside. And there. Maybe one right there. And that around each diamond there is this repeating dot line. So I'm going to start right in the point there, and maybe another one there, because I noticed that both diamonds point to that intersection there. And then some dots, very, very light with my pencil. And it keeps going. Goes up like that. Down like that. Already that starts to look like a paper towel to me. Starts looking like I am creating the feeling of a paper towel, which I think is very exciting. I think visual texture is very difficult, and I think it's very fun when you can figure out a way to do it. I love drawing wood grain because when you can really draw it, when you have a lot of practice drawing it, you can really make it look like something is made of wood. And I'm getting that same sort of feeling from this paper towel because I've never tried to do paper towel before. So that really makes me feel like I've learned something new. I also noticed that the different ways that light hits these indentations on the paper towel creates the illusion of, or I could create the illusion of form by doing those different shapes with different values. So maybe that's something that I'll work on later. I think for right now I'm going to move on to a different texture. And let's see. Oh, I need to label this one. Make sure you label so you can remember what it was you were doing. Paper towel. Next up, I think I'm going to, let's see. Maybe I'll create a water effect by creating some ripples. Maybe if I imagine this circle is filled with water, that would be interesting. I think I'm going to say this is the front and this is the back. You can imagine whatever you like for your circles, whatever helps you to practice texture. So if I imagine this circle is filled with water, maybe there's a droplet that's coming down into the water. Maybe there's a splash and some ripples. That will be, if I think about how I want to create the visual texture of water, I think that would be a good way to do it, with a splash and some ripples. Because if I leave it like this, you could think maybe that's water, but you can't really tell. It looks like maybe it's just some lines, maybe it's a different kind of shape, maybe it's an opening of some kind. You can't really tell. So if I can add more details to make it feel more like water, that will really help you to feel the imaginary texture, to imagine what that texture would feel like. So I'm going to try maybe a droplet of water is going into the water and splashing a little bit. A little bit of a splash. Something like that. Maybe not quite. Maybe I'll try again. Just keep exploring different ways that you can create implied texture. Maybe there's a round splash. Like that. And maybe a droplet that bounced up. And maybe this is a little bit more wavy. But I think that's the shape I want. Droplet that bounced up, splashed up. Maybe there's a wavy splash around it. It goes into the water like that. Kind of looks like a birthday candle. But maybe if I add some more splash details, more little droplets splashing around, and that will help give it the visual texture of water. Now maybe there's some ripples that have come out. Looks a little bit more like water. Still kind of looks like a birthday candle to me, so I am going to change that a little bit. That looks like a splash to me. And maybe I can make it look a little bit more like water with a little bit of shading down here. It can really help to take a step back and think about how you could improve, get closer to what you imagine in your mind. Like I said, this is a hard skill, so the more you practice, the more fun it is, because the more you learn about what you can do, and the easier it gets in the future. That looks kind of like water. All right. Take a couple more minutes, finish up. Maybe I'll do one more. How about grass? I'll do a grassy circle. Oh, I need to label this one. Water splash. You know, I love to do grass in my artwork. So maybe I'll just do a little bit of grass here. So take your last couple of minutes, finish up your implied visual texture. A little bit of grass coming off the sides of my circle. This can be a really fun thing to share with someone when you've created some visual texture, because it's a hard thing to do. So when you do something that you're proud of with it, it can be very nice to be able to show that to someone. It's one of the things I love about art, sharing the art, sharing the experience of creating it. All right, grassy. And this one I'll just leave blank for now. I hope this has helped you to imagine some different ways to create implied and visual texture, giving you some ideas of things that you can explore in your artwork. And as always, I hope you keep creating, keep sharing. I'll see you next time.